네팔은 작은 산악국가로 인도와 중국을 나누고 있습니다. 지렐족은 네팔의 59개 원주민 중 하나입니다. 그들은 표범 같은 사람들이라는 뜻의 지르파라고 불리는 것을 좋아합니다. 지르파는 그들이 네팔 서부에서 지리 돌라카로 이주했다고 믿습니다. 신생아는 태어난 지 3일이나 7일째 되는 날 라마나 자크리에 의해 세례를 받습니다. 이들은 복음주의 교회가 없는 네팔 부족 중 하나입니다. 지렐족은 세계에서 가장 높은 산맥인 히말라야의 계곡에 살고 있습니다. 이들의 주요 직업은 밀, 보리, 옥수수 농업과 염소 및 소 사육을 결합한 축산업입니다. 지렐족의 종교는 불교와 힌두교, 샤머니즘이 혼합되어 있습니다. 지렐족은 문맹률이 높기 때문에 이들에게는 시청각 자료를 통해 복음을 전할 수 있습니다. 또한 의료팀이 이들에게 현대 의술을 전해줄 수 있고 교사들은 이들에게 지렐족 언어로 된 신약 성경을 읽고 쓰는 법을 가르칠 수 있습니다. 지렐족이 영적 갈급함을 가지고 주님께 마음을 열게 되기를 기도합시다. 제자훈련 운동이 네팔 지렐족 안에서 시작되기를 기도합시다.
AD 970년 이래 유대인들은 체코 공화국의 수도인 프라하에 살았습니다. 11세기부터 15세기까지 그들은 박해를 당했지만 박해가 끝난 1522년부터 그들의 수가 빠르게 증가했습니다. 모라비아, 독일, 오스트리아, 스페인에서 추방당한 난민들이 프라하에 모여들었고 18세기 초에 이르러서는 세계 어느 곳보다 유대인들이 많이 거주하는 지역이 되었습니다. 그들 중 수천 명이 2차 세계대전 때 살해되었으며 남은 자들의 3분의 1가량은 이스라엘로 이주했습니다. 홀로코스트를 경험한 체코의 유대인들 중 일부는 현재 유대인의 전통과 민족성을 거부합니다. 오늘날 체코 공화국의 많은 유대인들은 종교에 무관심한데 카톨릭으로 개종한 이들도 있고 체코 문화에 동화된 이들도 있습니다. 대부분의 유대인들이 프라하에 살기 때문에 기독교 신앙의 유대인의 뿌리를 강조한다면 전도에 도움이 될 수 있습니다. 체코에 사는 유대인들은 약 3,700여 명이며 메시아닉 주 유대인은 확인되지 않습니다. 체코의 유대인들에게 영적인 갈급함을 주시길 기도합시다. 그들이 그들의 구원자를 갈망하고 예수님이 바로 메시아임을 깨닫도록 기도합시다.
My third point, there's confusion in the 20th century history of missions. Evangelicals in the 19th century were very influential in civil government and in a series of revivals. They not only focused on personal salvation, but upon the transformation of society. In the USA, they founded 100 colleges and banished slavery. In Korea, missionaries from that era founded universities like Yonsei University. In America, the period between the end of the War of 1812 and the beginning of the Civil War was a period of huge transformation in America, the biggest single transformation that ever occurred. The idea that this world was worth changing was a central emphasis. In China, missionaries planted a university in every province of China. But in the 20th century, evangelicals began to focus on prophecy, on eschatology. In the 20th century, most evangelicals did not go to college. They were poor people, just like the Koreans after the Japanese left, and they felt there was no use in trying to save the world. There was the World War I was right behind them, and for them it was better to focus on personal salvation. For them, getting as many people saved as possible was the most important thing. It was about all they could do. Personal salvation is, in fact, the most important thing. However, some evangelicals tended to become experts in guessing about the future and the end of history. Eschatology became a very special interest. Since these evangelicals were mainly non-college people, they lacked influence in the public sphere. They weren't the mayors of Seoul or the presidents of Seoul or the president of the United Nations. Instead of colleges, they established in the United States 157 Bible institutes. In their missionary work, these evangelicals no longer founded universities, but rather Bible schools and seminaries. Now, some evangelicals, however, continued to include the idea of changing society. These people, even as the 20th century opened up, retained the earlier concern for society, but sometimes they lost the concern for repentance and faith on the part of individuals. The student volunteer movement expressed this college-level society. The student volunteers established Yale in China and thought in terms of university education. The student volunteers were all college graduates. The vast majority of evangelicals didn't go to college. The influence of the student volunteers on state and federal governments in the 20th century gradually diminished. Thus, the USA today has inherited and pushed overseas from the 20th century a huge and serious polarization. There are still many arguments about the primacy of evangelism over social action, for example, not realizing that neither deeds without words nor words without deeds are meant to stand alone any more than you can separate faith and works. Now, my fourth point is there was a resulting loss in the glory of God and a disrespect for evangelicals. Evangelicals were missing from the universities. The university went secular, and now we have a big problem on our hands. So as a result, some people began to wonder, why is there so much evil in the world? And then they went on to say, maybe there really isn't a God. Many honest people and thinking people today are aware of two things. First, the huge amount of evil in the world, corruption, dishonesty, violence, wars, disease. And second, they're aware they do not see very many Christians fighting these evils. They also don't believe in Satan. As a result, they are led to think that there must not be a God if there is all this evil, this hideous evil, and they believe that if there is a God, he would not be both powerful and loving. God could not be both powerful and loving if there's all this evil. So, in other words, some people wonder why evangelicals are not effective in fighting this world's problems. And they even wonder about the validity of the Christian faith. We think about going around the world and making people into Christians. We forget the fact that people also leave the faith. For example, in France, which has had more religious influence from the Christian faith than almost any other country in the world, 80% of the people are Christians, but only 20% believe in God. Is that the future of evangelicalism? Now, some people wonder why evangelicals are not effective in fighting world problems. The absence of any large, strong evangelical mission agencies working against global disease and corruption leads many to feel that the Christian faith does not make any difference or that it doesn't care. Now, my fifth point is this: are we on the eve of a new era in Christianity and missions? But things are changing. As the 20th century unfolded, one by one, within 50 to 90 years, every one of the Bible institutes, the 157 Bible institutes in America, became colleges. Every single one transformed into a college and into a university maybe. Most evangelicals, they weren't gambling their money away, they weren't drinking their money away, thus eventually saved enough money to send their children to college, and that way evangelicals gradually gained greater influence in American society. More and more evangelicals by now see reasons to work against evil in this world and in human society, even though there are still many others who believe that such concerns are a diversion of the gospel. Such concerns are in fact for them a change from simple evangelical personal gospel, but they are faithful to the biblical gospel of the kingdom. One sad fact of history is the near total absence of evangelicals in the university world for from 50 to 90 years. There were practically no evangelicals in the universities, either as students or professors. This is a major reason why the thinking in the university world has become highly secular and even anti-Christian. Now, even Christian colleges and former Christian colleges like Youngstae or Harvard University or Princeton or Dartmouth or all these major colleges were once Christian are now, and even the Christian colleges like Wheaton College here, they're forced to use secular textbooks written by secular scholars from a secular point of view, which is often anti-Christian. And their secular interpretations of history coming from that secular university tradition are pervasive in the university today. Thus, there has never been a time like today when evangelicals have greater ability and greater responsibility and greater influence. And last night, Ron Cunningham pointed out that when you gain greater wealth and influence, you have greater responsibility. We have to go back and convert the universities. We have to change this world and not just talk about the next world. Now, the number of evangelicals worldwide is very large today. We know that. In the USA, the number of evangelicals in public office and in Congress and the Senate is much larger than ever before. God expects more from those who have more to offer and who have received more from Him. Now, businessmen even are getting into mission. What businesses can do and what businesses cannot do is often not clear, however. Many urgent needs around the world can be filled by honest, good-willed business people, and they're very greatly needed. However, businesses cannot operate when those who need their services can't pay for the services. A business must depend upon income from those who are served. However, many needs can be filled only by mission agencies whose support comes from other people who have benefited from the gospel but now want to share their good with people who cannot pay for the service. So we need both businesses and missions. and we have nowhere near enough businesses, and we have nowhere near enough missions. Now, local congregations are often now actively sending their own laymen overseas. If a congregation carefully thinks through a long-term plan for a specific place, it may accomplish a great deal. However, it is not often that a congregation can figure out things correctly. A congregation may do good things, but not be able to figure out the most strategic things. If they want to eradicate diseases that cause terrible suffering to people, for example, they also need to help found and support specialized mission agencies. Waiting until people get sick and then treating their illnesses is good, but it's not good enough. It is not the same as eradicating the pathogen that produces the disease. So people don't get sick. If you do that, then people don't get sick in the first place. So you don't have to heal them if they don't get sick. But now, notice, eradicating malaria, for example, is not something that people can do in 2 weeks. A family going overseas in 2 weeks is not going to be able to eliminate malaria. Now, so we need new features in existing missions, and we need new features in new mission agencies. Existing mission agencies, which focus exclusively on evangelization and church planning, must realize that such efforts alone fail to provide an example of the good works that faith is supposed to produce, as we see in Ephesians 2:10. Their churches may become merely places of refuge, places where people flee to concentrate on heaven and personal fulfillment on earth, and not to worry about the transforming of society and the reaching out across the world and to deal with poverty and disease. New missions must be concerned about the same wide spectrum of God's concern. God wants His will to be done on earth, not just in heaven. Now, if we do not recover the wide spectrum of God's concern, do we continue in the 20th century polarization? As a question. It does seem true that if we cannot reunite words and deeds, we will be merely prolonging the tragic polarization which characterized the 20th century. The idea is we need to go back to the 19th century when evangelicals were wealthy and influential and do the kinds of things that now we can do and that we couldn't do before.
흥했던 곳에서 다시 아버지를 만나고 주님 내 마음에 연약한 눈물의 끝에서 또 나를 안겨주시네. 작다 생각했던 그의 부르심 다시 나를 회복해 하시네. 다시 일어나 주를 예배하니 내 모든 기쁨이 되리. 그의 기쁨 되어 삶의 모든 순간을 주께 다 내어드리리.
우리 함께 고백합시다. 나는 내 마음에
복음이 흥했던 곳에서 다시 아버지를 만나고 주님 내 마음에 연약한 눈물의 끝에서 또 나를 안겨주시네.
다시 한번 고백하겠습니다. 나는